Yeah, go ahead.
There's two things. There's two things that kind of don't work with the monkeys and typewriters analogy, or they kind of do. There's an exceptionally long period of time that had to have taken place for evolution to have occurred from a single cell to a man. And the other thing is it's not random typing. The monkeys aren't randomly typing. Whenever there's a successful trait that's created, whenever they successfully type out one letter, that letter gets added into whatever the actual content is. And so it's not just random. There is random mutation, but if it's a bad mutation, it gets weeded out. If it's a neutral mutation, it gets carried, but not necessarily selected for. And if it's a beneficial one, then it gets picked up very quickly. And that's the key to evolution.
But even if you're accumulating neutral traits,
but
some of those are going to be
I don't know
neutral
exactly
in
what
themselves,
kind of,
but contrary to the overall emerging design. I can't hear you.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I just spaced what I said.
I don't know what you mean by contrary to the emerging design.
Okay. Well, what you're saying is that something can accumulate mutations that are in themselves neutral. Okay, but in the vast majority of those cases, you may have all kinds of neutral characteristics sitting around, but then you're looking at the probability that some of those form combinations that natural selection can work on. And like I say, it's been my experience with designing things that there's a lot of things that you've got to have 5 or 6 elements working together in a precise way before there's any benefit at all. And that's part of the problem. But the monkeys and typewriter thing, you made a very good point about that. That it's that you got to have an apt illustration with that. You have to have some kind of natural selection operating. So I'm going to add natural selection. So we've got our monkeys typing away and being suitably rewarded, to keep them going. And every time they type a combination of keys that's actually a word, the computer retains that and records that, and we'll say that that's a mutation that represents a mutation that in itself is neutral or beneficial. Okay, and every time that there's something that's not an actual word, it's deleted. Okay, well, I'm conceding that you would end up with a lot of words by pure chance. You would. But then you're still left with the problem of those words being arranged into coherent sentences, let alone a storyline. And they're not going to type out War and Peace or the U.S. Constitution anytime soon. Even if we have natural selection selecting all the possible words that they type out.
What if the monkeys were rewarded for typing out sentences instead of just words? What if their rewards started coming coming from, instead of just typing out words, eventually the rewards only came when they started typing out sentences instead. In other words,
okay, well,
natural selection,
let's say that they, yeah.
You pick certain traits that are beneficial, but eventually those traits, you know, you're competing against other creatures that are on the planet. So eventually those, you're going to have to start getting better and better stuff in order to be able to compete. You're never just standing still with natural selection.
Well, we could take it further. We could say that we could define what sentences are, that you have to have a subject, you have to have a noun, that indirect objects have to be a certain structure, you have to have your verbs, and so on. But even so, I mean, look at, getting to the first cell. Look at all the literature there is in the world that's been produced just with design. If we included all the literature that could be produced in the method you're describing, it would be unimaginably more vast than that. What I'm saying is that this illustrates the point that there's a limit to how much complexity you can say arose by chance, and have only natural selection as the mechanism for selecting things. Because, like I say, even if we go up to the sentence level of sentences, that doesn't mean it's going to make sense. I mean, I used to take care of. I used to work at a mental institution, and there were people that could talk a paragraph, say one thing, and then the next paragraph would be totally unrelated. And then there's people that would talk in a sentence, but the next sentence would be totally unrelated. Then there's people that could speak individual words and even make sentences, but it didn't make a bit of sense, all the way down to people that are just babbling. And of course, there's a million other mental disorders, but this is one very fascinating digression. Is showing how linguistics really works. And with the DNA, we are talking about a language, and I'm not saying that I'm not insisting that it had to be spoken by an intelligent being. I'm just saying that there's a similar degree of complexity. In fact, it's probably far more complex than our syntax. It's recording.
No, I said it recorded.
From what I know about DNA is that it's got starts and stops, and the start codon starts programming the protein, and then there's the stop that tells it when to stop programming the protein. And if there's a mutation, then you're going to get a different type of protein than you would if it recorded it accurately. And so it's not so much a language as there's this thing that starts and stops, and then you have the random potential for a mutation. And because of that, and with a lot of time, it is very possible to get the diversity that we have right now. When you get right down to it, if you're arguing that because there's a lot of information within a cell,